So Ronnie, let's start at the beginning of your time in Black Sabbath. You're coming out of tremendously successful band with Rainbow. When did it first come on your radar? Where was the first approach that there would be interest in you becoming the new singer in Black Sabbath?
Well, it all really started with a conversation I had with Tony on the phone at a time when he was about to leave Black Sabbath, and was introduced to Tony by then Sharon Arden, who, of course, Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife. And one thing led to another, and was invited into the studio that they were using. Tony said, well, I want to play something for you, and so they strapped on their instruments and they played me the beginning of what was a song called that became Children of the Sea. Could you do anything with this? I said, sure, give me a few minutes and I'll see what I can do. Put something together. I sang the song, we did it. Tony at that point said, I want to play with this guy. And that was the very beginning of it all.
How well did you know the guys in Sabbath before you became a member of the band? Was there a personal connection, or was it just fellow musicians that you had kept an eye on and were aware of what they were doing?
In Tony's case, because we had spoken on the phone, I felt I had some connection with him. But I had never met Bill before, I'd never met Geese before. Met Billy that night, the night I told you that I went to the place where they were rehearsing, and instantly fell in love with Bill. Just the sweetest man I think I've ever met. A lovely guy. And Geezer's Geezer. He was, very low-key and a bit standoffish for me, because I'm not a standoffish person, and Tony's not standoffish, nor is Billy. But, that just happened to be Geezer's personality. Once you get to know him, you find out that's not what he is at all. So I didn't really have that much of a personal connection with them. So that was my first knowledge of them as people. And again, that's why it took me a while to make that decision. Do I want to do this? Because I didn't really know them as people.
It really was, I would imagine, for you something you really had to think long and hard about. I imagine there were reservations on a number of different levels before you made that move, right?
There were. And of course, one of them had to be, do you want to go into a situation that has not been successful for a while? Because there must have been reasons why it wasn't successful. And did I want to make myself part of that unsuccessful pattern? So I thought about that a little bit, but it wasn't that for me. It was never that for me. It's never been about that. It's always ever been about the music and the people that I'm playing with. People first. If I don't like them, I don't want anything to do with them. So that was a consideration, and musically, of course, was a consideration as well. But in starting to write the things, just that particular night, I mean, I loved what Tony's ideas were. I loved where he was coming from.
Let's get into that recording of that first very landmark album, Heaven and Hell, which of course would later become the name that the band now uses. Tell us how that went. Were you comfortable? Were you still apprehensive at that point? What were you thinking?
Well, I think the most devastating thing was that 2 or 3 days after we had decided that we were going to do this together, and Ozzy was now not going to be there, Geezer left. And so suddenly it was just kind of Tony and Bill and myself. So it made it a lot more difficult. I mean, I thought we were all, a band with a bass player and a singer and a guitar player and a drummer, and it was just going to go smoothly. But who knew whether he was ever going to come back or not? And at that point, we didn't think he would. But Tony was still very positive about it. Bill was very positive about it. So we started to do some more writing. Then we brought another bass player, and I suggested Craig Gruber, who had played with me before, who was a fine bass player. He came in to play and stayed with us all the way through going to Miami to record the album, at which point Geezer called Tony and said, I'm really miserable. And if you think you guys would want me back again, I'd really love to come back again. And so Tony approached me and said, Geezer called, and whatever you think, Ronnie. I said, it's not the same without Geezer, of course. So Geezer came back, so that made life easier. But it was a lot more difficult before that, because we were now writing almost without a plan. We were just writing. Is that good? Well, I don't know. Sounds good to me. It's nicer when you have all the parts of the puzzle together, because then you can make those judgments together.
Was there a sense that this album was going to be this special landmark album, or was there a sense that, well, it's going to take a little while to break down some doors, maybe establish some new fans that are going to welcome you as the lead singer, or did you feel immediately, we've really got something special here?
I think we were probably all a little bit afraid of what it was going to be. Well, will it be accepted? We don't know. We would go to the local strip club after we'd record one of the songs. We'd go to the strip club and they would play it, and the strippers would dance to it, and if they liked it, we knew we had a good one. Did Heaven and Hell, they loved that. Oh, they just absolutely loved that.
The song Heaven and Hell.
Oh, they loved that one. They couldn't wait to dance to that one.
That's a long dance.
Yeah, but they loved it, and all the rest of the songs we brought in, they loved as well, and so it was a great way for us to gauge what was going on. But I think we were all a little bit afraid. Is this going to be accepted? And we were so lucky that it was right from the get-go, and everyone who heard it said that too. This is brilliant, but I don't think we ever wanted to take the chance of believing that because we didn't want to be let down by that. But again, in retrospect, the hindsight is a wonderful thing. Yeah, boy, we knew it was going to be a smash, but we know we didn't know that at all.
Right. And looking back on Heaven and Hell now, do you have 2 or 3 tracks that are your favorites that are most personal to you or that you like the most for some reason?
Well, Children of the Sea, of course, because it was the first one, and I love the song, and everyone else has loved that song. Heaven and Hell, without a doubt, it's a song I always wanted to write. It was a title that I first heard done by a band called the Easy Beats, and the Easy Beats, of Friday on My Mind fame, were a band that we toured with in a band I had called Ronnie Dio and the Prophets, which became the Elf Band. And we toured with them, and they were just so influential to us. And one of the songs they had written was a song called Heaven and Hell. And I always wanted to write a song with that title. So that was a title that I put forth to the guys and had a direct idea about it as well. And then luckily Tony came up with this wonderful riff for it, and so it became a song that I was very proud of. So those two, of course, were that.
So the album is done. The album comes out, Heaven and Hell, and then of course it's time for you to kind of establish your turf on the live stage
Right.
as a member of Black Sabbath. Tell us about those first early shows as a member of the band and what you were feeling taking the stage, the audience reaction to you.
Well, I was very confident in what we were doing. At that particular point, we only had the 8 songs, I think it was 8 songs from Heaven and Hell. It's all we had of what we had done together. So we were doing, obviously, Black Sabbath and Paranoid and Iron Man, the things from the other, which made it a bit more difficult with the diehard fans. And so for me, it was a matter of looking out at an audience and seeing that all the time. I spent probably the first 2 or 3 weeks, that's all I ever saw, until we got to Philadelphia, played the Spectrum, and someone unleashed this big banner that said, Philadelphia loves the Reverend Ronnie James Dio, and I never got the finger again after that. I don't know whether I can attribute that to the banner or to the people in Philadelphia, but it stopped after that. And maybe it was just, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks was enough, and maybe the word got out that, I was okay.
So the touring is done. It's time to make a second album, and that album is of course Mob Rules. Tell us about the approach going in. You feeling a little more confident? You've got the touring behind you. You've got the album. There's more of a chemistry. You know your bandmates a little bit better. How do you feel set the stage if you can, going into that recording?
Well, we had a different drummer at that point. Vinny Appice came in at that point. Billy had gone. Bill didn't want to tour anymore, so Billy left. And so there we were, kind of divided yet again. And we approached the writing very much differently than we did the first one. Geezer had gone, so we wrote in a very controlled environment in a living room with little amplifiers. And with Mob Rules, we hired a studio, and we just turned up as loud as possible and, just smashed through it all. So it made for a different kind of an attitude. More difficult for me to have to sing over all that and try to create while all that's going on. So it was a lot harder for me than the first album was. And a lot of times success breeds problems. And that happened. I felt that really did happen, that all of the bad things that could be used were used, from drug abuse to mental abuse. I just found that it all happened. So it didn't make for that happy an album, not happy like Heaven and Hell was. Heaven and Hell was this, the sky's the limit, and Mob Rules is a bit more contained. Oh, we need to do this and we need to do that. And once you've had a successful album like Heaven and Hell, of course you're going to compare it. People are going to compare it to that first successful album, and so are you. I just found it a lot more difficult album. The process was a lot more difficult for me. But and again, I'm proud of it. I think it's a great album.
Some of those tensions and differences that you said started to creep in during the recording of the Mob Rules album, did they then manifest themselves on the subsequent tour for that album? Because Live Evil, the double album that was a result of the Mob Rules tour, is often pointed to as the album where it was kind of a breaking point for you, which is kind of drove you out of the band in some regards. Can you elaborate on that, if that is indeed true, and what the reasons were why that live album was such a... Was it the live album itself that was a touchy thing to you, or was it just a cumulative thing of what had gone on up to that point that you decided to leave?
I thought that the album was had excellent qualities. I thought that before we started to mix it, it was going to just be wonderful and so much fun to do. But during the very initial mixing of that particular album is when it fell apart, and I had no idea why. Only at the time that Vinny and I were, it was kind of Vinny and I versus Tony and Geese at that point. Again, I had no idea why. I never knew what I did to do that. I've heard a lot of rumors, you know, that I'm a control freak, and it was perhaps my fault because I was trying to be in control, but I never was.
Well, there's rumors that you would sneak into the studio, I mean, and alter things. True or false?
Oh, that's complete and total bullshit. How could that possibly be? All we did was go in at the time we were supposed to be there, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So when we went for the first 2 days, you know, everybody was there at 2 o'clock, and then the third day was only Vinny and I there. And we just couldn't wait around any longer, so we left at, you know, 4 o'clock. And when we left at 4 o'clock, the other two turned up. And same thing the next day, and same thing the next day, until we both got a call that said, I think we should let Tony mix this album. In other words, your services are not required anymore. I said, okay, well, I guess the end of that one then, and that was the end of that one.
That would lead and launch you into tremendous success with the Dio Band,
yeah,
with yourself and Vinny. So fast forwarding through that tremendous period in your career, revisiting Sabbath once again for Dehumanizer,
right,
and the reunion that would come. How did that happen? Who called who, and who said maybe now would be the right time to revisit and pick things up with Ronnie again?
Well, you know, to my recollection and to the way I think this happened, Geezer was the one who made the first overture. Geezer came to a Dio show that we had done in Minneapolis. So Geezer and I talked that night at length in the bar in Minneapolis, and he said that he had spoken to Tony, and Tony really would like to think about doing it again. So that planted the seed, and from there it became something that we decided to do. And so we started to write, and we wrote the songs for Dehumanizer. But it wasn't the most happy situation I've ever been in. Once again, it was that there was something wrong. There was just not this openness. It just wasn't there. Just the total acceptance that we had in Heaven and Hell, the fact that here we were creating again and should have been so happy to do it, it spilled over into the tour that we did as well. And the tour, I was told, again, not asked, at the beginning of the tour, that we were now not going to be headlining our own show in Los Angeles, which I thought was important for us, but that we were going to be opening for Ozzy, who at that point, his camp had said a lot of very bad things about all of us, certainly myself included, but about Tony as well. And I'm a band guy. And if you say something about a guy who's in a band with me, you're going to pay the price for it, because I'm not going to stand for that. I mean, I live and die with the people in my band, no matter what has happened in the past. And so I said, no, I refuse to do that. I will not open for someone who has treated us that badly. I can deal with it, I'm thick-skinned, but I won't let that happen to Tony. I think that's unfair. So no, I refuse to do it. Well, they wanted to do it. They wanted to do that. So my thoughts were, you probably want to do it because you're going to announce a reformation of the band again. Probably time that you're going to do that. You could probably make a lot more money than what we're doing. So off they went, and that was the end of it. And I was no longer in that band, twice. So that's the way that one ended, and so be it.
Flashing forward now, once again, through another chunk of 12, 13, 14 years, something like that, we have Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio, the Dio Years CD coming out, which I imagine was the catalyst for the third and current reunion.
Every time we've gotten back together, it's always been as though we had never left, like we'd seen each other the day before, because we really liked each other a lot. And through all the things that, you know, I've said, all I'm trying to do in this is just tell the truth. I'm not carping or having a bitch and a moan about it. I'm not doing that at all. It's just what the truth is. And once we decided to do that, then we wrote 2 songs, which we were supposed to write 2. We wrote 3, and it was just so much fun. It was just, wow, it was just great. And we heard the songs, you know, after we wrote them, you know, Tone and I went, wow, here we are again. Geese heard them, played on, went, great, just great. From there it was, maybe we should do an album. Okay, let's do an album. And we did, and this was exactly the way it was supposed to be. Just like the early days. It was just like Heaven and Hell again. A lot more fun. And we survive within the things that we all are now. There's no jealousy. There's no one whispering behind anyone's back at all. That just never happens. The friendship just supersedes what we do as musicians now. And that's always been the most important thing to me. I can always count on any of them for anything that I need. So this is a wonderful, wonderful time of all of our lives. Heaven and Hell has made a great difference in just my attitude as a human being now. So I'm just so happy that it did happen for us all.
So, Geezer, the introduction of Ronnie James Dio as a member of Black Sabbath, when did it first come on the radar of yourself and Tony and Bill that we need to make a change in the band?
I think it was making the last album called, ironically, Never Say Die. And we knew that the band either had to completely split up altogether or there was a big change coming. Ozzy had left the band at one point, and I'd left the band. And then we all got back together and realised that it just wasn't working. You know, the chemistry wasn't there anymore.
How aware were you of Ronnie James Dio prior to him coming into the band?
I didn't know him whatsoever at all. Tony had met him at a party somewhere and he liked what he heard, and I think Tony and Ronnie were going to do an album together anyway, regardless of the Sabbath thing. After Ozzy'd left, Tony says, well, I know this singer that might fit in, why don't we bring him over and see how you get on with him and stuff. So Ronnie came over and he was absolutely brilliant. So
You had actually left the band for a brief time while Heaven and Hell was in its early stages.
yeah, we were working with Ronnie for a couple of weeks, and then I had a lot of personal problems going on in England, and I think I was away for about 2 or 3 months. There wasn't any bad feelings or anything, because everybody knew I had to go and sort myself out. And I kept in touch with Tony and Bill all the time, and talked to Ronnie. And after about, I think it was about 3 months or something, they says, fancy coming back in? And I came back in, heard they'd written a lot of stuff by then, and it just blew me away when I heard it.
So your impressions of the material were strong. What you heard was
Oh
really
yeah, I loved it.
Made it
Absolutely
know
loved
that
it.
what you were coming back to was something you really wanted to be a part of this next phase.
Yeah,
of
I really loved the music that they'd come up with, so it was easy for me to fit back in.
And up to that point in Sabbath, you were responsible for a large part of the lyrics in the band and writing the lyrics. Now Ronnie James Dio comes in, who is also a lyricist, so I imagine that relieved a lot of that part of what you had.
It did, because I was always a reluctant lyricist, and then on the Never Say Die album I just said, this is the last time I'm ever going to write lyrics for this band.
What are your memories of recording the Heaven and Hell album, of the actual sessions, when you returned to the band and started recording? Did it feel like there was a great chemistry and this was going to be a great relaunch from the band right from the start?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I came back and some of the bass had already been done, but I went in and I did my own version of that. I didn't want to listen to the bass that was on there, just so that I didn't copy it, although there was some good parts that I nicked. And we did that. That was in, I think, Florida, and then we had to go to France. We needed a couple more tracks, and we went to Paris and wrote Neon Nights.
What was the mindset of the band now as you record this record and you get ready to go out live with a new singer? Ronnie has said that he was fully aware that it was going to take some time for him to get over to the audience and people who were used to seeing Ozzy, who still wanted to see Ozzy. As from your perspective, did you think it was going to be a tough road for a little while?
I didn't, to be honest, I didn't think anything about it, because I think because I came in fresh, with fresh ears, I realised what a great album that was and how great a singer Ronnie was. Just the band was like really fresh again.
Did you have any feeling at that time that the album that you had made was so special that 30 years plus on, it was going to be regarded as one of the landmark Sabbath records?
No, you never think like that. It's impossible to say, in 30 years' time you'd be listening to something else. I mean, at that time, I didn't think Sabbath, the old Sabbath, the original Sabbath stuff would ever be listened to again, in the 80s. To me, that it was all finished and done with, and it's like, let's go on with something new.
Going into album number 2 with the Mob Rules, your a little more entrenched now. As the recording of this album happens, you're not kind of half there and half not. What were your thoughts about making the second record?
Well, I remember the first track that we did was the track Mob Rules. We were on tour with Heaven and Hell, and that somebody had asked us if we could do a track for the heavy metal film. And we actually went to John Lennon's house, and there was all this old amps and stuff lying about, and we thought it would be just see what we could write. And like it was as if by magic, we came up with Mob Rules. Sort of from one jam we came up with it, and Ronnie did the lyrics, sent it off to the company as a demo, and they loved it and wanted to use that particular version on the soundtrack.
Of course, it was the introduction for you, for the first time in a really long time, playing with a new drummer, with Vinny coming in. You know,
I forgot about Vinny.
Yeah, so Vinny's first studio record with the band as a bass player, and obviously having to be so locked in with your drummer.
Well, Vinny had come in halfway through the tour, the Heaven and Hell tour anyway, so we got used to playing with each other anyway.
Right.
So it wasn't that hard, really.
What did you feel about what he brought to the band in the studio? Obviously a different style of player than Bill.
Yeah, I mean, Vinny's more of a direct, probably a little less complicated and less swingy than Bill.
Right.
But I love playing bass with either of them. They're both great drummers.
I think that, to me, I mean, Heaven and Hell has such a stature, rightfully so, as this great, great album. But if you really look at it, Mob Rules is pretty much right there. I think it gets overshadowed a little bit by how iconic Heaven and Hell is. I mean, just great material from start to finish. Are there any favorites that you have from that album?
I like Sign of the Southern Cross because it gave me a chance to experiment with some bass effects and stuff. It's a great song, so it's probably my favourite off that album.
The resulting live album, Live Evil, somewhat of a pivotal record in a lot of ways. Some people love it, some people don't think so fondly of it. What are your thoughts of that album?
Horrible.
Really?
I mean, musically it's good, but just the time when it was done, it was a bad time for us because again, we started to disintegrate. I think Ronnie seemed to desperately want to do his own stuff, and we sort of wanted to keep it going as it was. And we weren't communicating with each other, and there was sort of me and Tony going one way and Ronnie and Vinny going the other way. The Yanks against the Brits.
That's exactly what Ronnie said, actually.
Yeah, that's
that there was a division that he felt, where him and Vinny were on one side and you and Tony were on the other side.
It was, because I mean, obviously me and Tony had been together since we were kids, since we were 18.
Right.
And Ronnie was seeing it more as a profession rather than a friendship thing, I think. And it's sort of disintegrated.
And of course that was the end of the first chapter of the Dio fronted at the time Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And then things would pick up again with Dehumanizer, and the second time around that you guys would work with Ronnie. Tell us how that came about.
I think it first started when I got up to jam with Ronnie, with Dio, the band Dio, in, I think it was Minneapolis or somewhere like that. And I've no idea why I was there. And why would I be in Minneapolis? Can't remember why. Anyway, I noticed that Dio was on down the road doing a gig. And I hadn't seen him since we'd split up in '83 or whatever it was. And I just thought, let's go down and see. And he welcomed me in as if nothing had happened bad between us, which it hadn't really. It was all down to touring madness while we split up in the first place. I got up and jammed with him, made a few beers together after, and it was just really good seeing him after all those years. And from that I told Tony about it, and from that it just sort of snowballed, and we thought, to give it a try again. And I don't think it worked out at first, so we sort of said, forget it. was Cozy Powell was in the band at that time. Ronnie said he'd come back to the band if Vinnie came back, which is what happened. And it started working well then. We finished up with writing Dehumanizer, went into the studio and did it.
Do you feel that that album was somewhat overlooked because of the climate and the time that it came out in music?
It was like the grunge era. So people that had been into metal were like listening to bands like Nirvana and Soundgarden and people like that, which were all, you know, good bands. It probably was underestimated at the time.
I think that's one of the great benefits of you guys being active again, which we'll get into in a second, is the fact that I think that Heaven and Hell Sabbath being active again with Ronnie has shown new light on that record, and how strong some of that material really is that some people may have missed the first time around. Do you have favorite moments or stories about the recording of Dehumanizer?
Oh, God. The video for TV Crimes. And it was we had to do it in Los Angeles, and it was right in the middle of the riots that were going on in LA, the Rodney King riots. And we had to be escorted in by the police. I don't know why the director picked this particular place, but it was right in the riot area. Like, all the buildings were still on fire and everything. And the police station it had like sandbags around the door with coppers with machine guns waiting to be attacked. The guy says, okay, we got 2 days here, so forget that. We'll do it in 4 hours. So we just sort of rushed through it and did it and got out of there.
The tour that would follow for that album, that tour would eventually lead to Ronnie's departure again, somewhat short-lived period. Give us your version of what happened on that tour and how it unraveled again.
Well, from what I remember, it was supposed to be Ozzy's last show ever, and he wanted to finish his career with his band and the original Sabbath as the final encore. So we said, yeah, we'll do that. But Ronnie just said, no, I'm not doing that. So we said, fine, okay, we'll do it without you. And it seemed to just like, that started off some really bad feelings in the band. And it just got worse and worse and worse, and we weren't even talking to each other in the end. And so the last gig, we just thought, well, that's it, we can't go on like this. Went our separate ways.
Looking back on that decision to open for Ozzy, you had Rob Halford eventually come in and sing that show. Looking back on your decision at that point to do that, do you feel it was the right decision, or do you regret having done that?
I don't regret it. It was up to Ronnie if he wanted to do it or not. It's his decision. I respect his decision.
Well, in his view, he had said that he thought that it was just kind of the sign of what was to come, which was the inevitable reunion for the original band with Ozzy.
Well, no, because to us it wasn't, because it was put to us that it was definitely Ozzy's last gig ever,
Right.
as anything, and he'd like to finish his whole career with like 3 songs from the original Sabbath, and that's the way we went into it.
The third reunion, which the catalyst was the greatest hits record, the Dio years, right?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when that project first came up?
It was in the air for a couple of years. I mean, Tony was saying it'd be great to go out and do Heaven and Hell again, and we called Ronnie, and he was up for it, and Vinnie was up for it. And it just seemed a natural thing to do. It was definitely in the air with all of us. And then when we got together at Tony's house to do the 2 or 3 new tracks for the Dio Years album, it was brilliant. It's great feeling working together again. It's probably the best feeling ever that we've had together. And the whole plan was to put out the box set and just do a one-off tour culminating at Radio City Music Hall. I think it sold out in about 60 minutes or something ridiculous. And when, of course, when all the promoters heard that, it was all on the phone. And eventually that turned into a 9-month tour. And we were in Japan, and we were doing this press conference. And one of the Japanese interviewers said, will you be continuing after this tour? And I was like, no, that's it, kind of. And Ronnie went, yeah, we're going to do an album. And it was like, yes. And it just felt good, you know, and just needed one of us to say it.
Let me be the interviewer that asks, Do you do more? I mean, where does it go from here?
I've no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Just take it day by day.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it. That's how we got this far. I mean, for me, it's been a privilege to work with somebody like Ronnie and Tony and Vinny. You know, they're absolutely brilliant at what they do. There's nobody better than them. And it's been a great 30 years.
So, Vinny, your history with Black Sabbath starts for the tour for the Heaven and Hell record. Tell us how you first got the call to become a member of the band.
Well, it's actually a funny story because before that I got a call from Sharon Osbourne, and Ozzy was putting his first band together. So I don't know where she got my number from, but she called me and said, Ozzy's putting a band together, you know, we're interested in you playing with them, and, you know, we'll bring you over to England, hang out with Ozzy and stuff. I was young, you know, I went, where's England? You know, I asked my brother Carmine about Ozzy. I said, is he pretty nuts? Should I do it? And he kind of said, yeah, he's pretty crazy. You know, at that time he was. So I turned it down. And then like 2 months later, I get a call from the tour manager from Black Sabbath. And they said, we got your number from somewhere, and, you know, you want to come down and meet Tony? They were at the Marquis Hotel in Hollywood. I said, yeah, that'd be cool. And
did you feel like there was an immediate chemistry at that point?
funny thing, I was driving in the car, Neon Nights came on. I went, wow, that sounds good. The new singer sounds great. That was Ronnie, you know.
Right.
I knew he was from Rainbow and stuff, but it was ironic that I just happened to hear it. So we played Neon Nights and a couple times, and then we stopped, and everybody, you know, went to the bar. And I'm like, okay. And then they came back and said, all right, you're in, and we're playing in 4 days in Hawaii to 30,000 people. So, okay. So I went home, you know, started listening to all that stuff and writing charts out, and it became that.
Were you a big Sabbath fan?
I wasn't a big Sabbath fan, but I've heard the early stuff, and I heard some of Heaven and Hell, you know. All the people I played with usually I wasn't a fan of. I heard the music, and which was probably better than going in as, oh my God, I'm playing with this guy.
Right.
You know, I just went in as, okay, cool, let's be a team and do it, you know. So,
any kind of hazing that went on as the new guy coming into the band at that point?
No, because they knew we only had 4 days. You know, we didn't play an awful lot, and then they were nervous too, because at that point they never played with anybody but Bill Ward.
Right.
So here I am coming in, and I was about 21 years old. There was a lot of pressure, you know, so there wasn't any hazing going on until later on, you know, just
Being a new guy, and you have such a different style than Bill's style. Were you given direction as to say, well, you got to play that somewhat like this, or were you in the early days allowed to really do what you wanted to do with the old songs?
Well, I had a good ear, so I listened to the old songs and tried to capture what Bill was doing. Bill's an odd player. He actually considers himself a percussionist and not a drummer, and that's the way he plays. So I kind of listened to what he was doing and tried to capture that. And here and there, Tony would say, you know, that wasn't quite right, maybe more like, but they never, you know, that band, nobody ever goes, you know, the third bar, you know, those 16th notes you're playing, those are a little fast or something. It's not like that. It's like, it doesn't feel right. Okay, how about this?
Right.
It's kind of like, you know, telepathy.
Right. Did you feel like you locked in with Geezer? What was it like playing with Geezer and as a bass player?
Well, Geezer was more of a, you know, his groove, and he was kind of more on the lead side. You know, he was a busier bass player.
Right.
So it allowed me to keep the groove for him, and then kept, you know, jump on some of the things he was playing. So he played so many cool licks, and I would listen and get used to how he played, and then I would start to know when he was going to do those licks and play them with him.
Of course, The Mob Rules, being the second record, was your recording debut with the band. What are your memories of being in the studio for the first time with the guys?
Well, the first time we went in the studio, we were in England on the Heaven and Hell tour. And then Warner Brothers wanted a song for the movie Heavy Metal. So they arranged for us, we had a couple of days off to go in the studio, which was John Lennon's house, owned by Ringo now, where he did Imagine. We started playing the song, you know, putting it together, and then we played it. kept running it down. Then we started recording it, and it came real fast, you know. And then after it was done, and a couple overdubs on it, and Ronnie started singing on it, you could hear that there was something special there. It was kind of a little bit of a different sound than Heaven and Hell, but it was exciting, you know.
Right. How do you feel about that album overall? What was the studio experience like working with the guys, the material, you know, being able to finally put your handprint on a Sabbath record at that point?
Well, the nice thing about the Mob Rules, we did rehearse a lot. So by the time we went into the studio, the parts were there. I knew kind of what I was going to play, and tried to think in Sabbath what Sabbath should sound like and what it was before, and how to approach it that way, you know, not so aggressive but more on the dark side, you know. And I just played my parts, took any suggestions. Martin Birch produced it, and you know, I went in with my eyes open and learned from the masters, you know.
Do you have any favorite tracks or stories about the making of Mob Rules?
Well, actually, when we were making it, my brother was next door with Rod Stewart, you know. So we would screw around a lot of times and, you know, lock them in their room. And, you know, we'd put crosses up everywhere so when they walked in, they thought we were nuts. And, yeah, it was some fun times, you know.
Yeah. The things started to unravel a little bit for this lineup of the band with the recording and the release of the live album, Live Evil. What are your recollections about that period and what you experienced during that time with the band?
Again, I was there with eyes open. You know, things happened between them, and I didn't quite understand what was happening, and, you know, I just had to just go along with the flow. And it became, you know, it wasn't the same thing after a while. It became, you know, we were isolated. A lot of things with me and Ronnie and Tony Geezer, and Jeff Nichols was playing keyboards, and we kind of became a little bit more separated, you know. Actually, it was my first big band breakup.
Yeah.
You know?
It seems like the mixing of that album has become the real sensitive hot button. You know, that's the one thing that everybody kind of brings up is the mixing of Live Evil.
We usually went in at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and we thought that was the time to start. You know, so we were there for a couple hours, and then nobody else was there. So obviously you're not just going to sit there. So you know, comments were made and suggestions were made, and then I guess Tony Keys came later on, and it was crazy like that. You know?
That would, of course, lead to the first breakup of the band, and you and Ronnie would go on and do the Dio band.
Yeah.
And then years would pass, and then the reunion once again of this lineup for Dehumanizer. When did that first come on your radar that this could happen again with Sabbath for you?
Well, that was like in 90, 91. So Ronnie actually called me and said, you know, you'd be interested in playing, you know, finishing the record with us. I said, yeah. So then like 2 days later, I was flying to England to go finish the record, you know. And it was kind of the same thing as it was with the Dio years. I walk in and everything was cool. Hey, how you doing? You know. And we made a good record, a damn good record, heavy.
It's a record that I think got overlooked and a little lost in the shuffle because what was happening in the musical climate at the time.
Yeah,
but
music changed.
Yeah, but I think now people looking back on Dehumanizer realize that it really was a heavy, strong record that I think has a new appreciation now. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when that came out, grunge was just starting to come out, so it was just not at the right time. And now people are listening to it going, whoa, this is, you know, this is a good album, you know. And it sounds good, too. It still sounds good. You crank it up, it sounds great. So you're right. It's getting more appreciation, more listens now than it was before.
What are your memories about the tour for Dehumanizer for as long as it lasted?
Well, it was positive. It was cool. We were playing smaller places, you know. I mean, it's funny because we did have to, you know, band was always on the top, and now we're lower on the ladder, you know.
And of course, the end of the tour, you know, Ronnie and Geezer have both spoken about this in my segments with them, but the way things unraveled at the end with Ronnie's decision or refusal to not play a show opening for Ozzy.
Right.
Where did you stand on that decision? Did you see his point?
I knew I was in the middle, and I didn't want to let Tony and Geezer down. I didn't want to let Ronnie down, so I just talked to everybody. Sat down with Ronnie, said, look, I don't want to have them get somebody else and go up cold. I don't want to let them down like that, and I don't want to let you down. I want to continue to play with you. Then I talked to Tony and Geese, and I did the right thing. You know, I was in the middle, talked to both parties. Everybody was happy. I did the gig with them, you know, because Rob Halford sang.
Right.
So it was enough with, we had Rob Halford come in doing songs we never played. We rehearsed once. So I was nervous. Tony and Geezer were nervous. You know, you don't go up with that confidence anymore. And it was a big show, you know, with Ozzy's retirement thing. It was a big deal. And Rob had to go up, and he pulled it off. Pulled it off.
So it implodes, it unravels again.
Yeah,
You
round
know,
two.
Round two in grand fashion with Halford doing one show and then the end of it. And then, like Ronnie likes to say, it's kind of like a locust. It comes back again another 11, 12 years or so later. And I guess the catalyst for the third and current reunion of the band was the Black Sabbath Dio Years Best Of record. What's interesting about that is that when that was initially planned and it was decided to do 3 new songs for that, you were not originally a part of
Again.
the go-around. Again, you were...
Yeah, same thing.
Bill
Exactly.
Ward was on board at the time, and
Right.
then that kind of fell apart. So how did you get the call for that?
So I heard that they were reforming and Ronnie was coming back and it was going to be Bill and Tony Geezer. I went, okay, that's cool. And then everybody kept calling me going, did you hear that, dude? You should be there. You know, everybody's calling me. I said,
Because
well,
at that point, you had actually a much larger history
Yeah.
with that lineup of the band than Bill.
Then Bill.
Right.
Yeah. I knew deep inside that something was going to happen, you know. And then sure enough, I got a call from Wendy, and she said, you know, look, Bill's not going to do it, and there's problems. You want to do it? I said, yeah. You know, I told Wendy too. I haven't seen Wendy in a couple of years. So I told him, I said, look, I got to tell you something. She goes, what? I said, I gained a lot of weight, man. I'm like 300 pounds. I had to get a big drum stool to sit on. She goes, are you kidding? I said, yeah, but I could probably lose it. So she told everybody. So when I got there, they didn't see me, but they were kind of peeking around the wall and shit. And I walk in, I'm like, ah! So it broke the ice immediately. You know, I was like, you bastard, you know, and had a beer and stuff.
And it seems that the initial reformation of the band for the Dio Years, it was kind of there was no master plan in place, was there? It was, let's do these 3 new songs, and then organically everything just started to happen, right?
Right. Because that's the downfall of the band, when you start going, okay, we're going to do 2 albums and 2 tours, then there's pressure and things get funky, you know. Became actually really close this time as a band and personally, you know. It really worked.
That led to live shows, of course, coming off of that Best Of record, and then, of course, another full-length studio album with The Devil You Know. When you first came back to the band for the 3rd time for the Dio Years and you kind of got your toe in the water by doing 3 new songs for the compilation, was a full new studio record something you really wanted to do?
Yeah, I thought it would be great, you know, to make another record together, and you know, but I just thought, well, we'll just do the tour and see what happens. But we just kept getting better and better and better, and it was like silly not to do another record, you know. So then it came up. I remember we were in Japan, and Ronnie said, hey, Tony asked me to do, you want to do another record? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, cool, man, you know.
How do you feel about the record now, looking back on it? Are you happy with it? Do you think it was to do everything you wanted it to do creatively, or do you still feel there's maybe the better one down the line?
I think there's a better one down the line. I love the Devil You Know. It's heavy, dark. I think you know, there's a little one more left than everybody that could be the one, you know,
Right.
and the killer album.
So looking back on your 3-time span of
3 Black
involvement,
Sabbaths.
3 Sabbaths, well, 2 Sabbaths in the Heaven and Hell, what are your recollections of the whole thing, looking at it as a whole? I mean, was it, for you as a career move, probably one of the best things that's happened, I would imagine?
Oh,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I started in '76. I'm still going, you know,
Right.
and a lot of people are dead. A lot of people can't play anymore or burned out. You know, I'm still going, and luckily made a lot of classic records, Mob Rules and Holy Diver and all this stuff that inspired people. So I was lucky enough to be in those situations to make those records. We didn't know at the time we were making these records that this is going to be a classic album. So just to play, you know, Black Sabbath's just part of the rock history, and just be associated with that is pretty incredible. And, you know, I appreciate it. I love it.
So Tony, going back to 1979, Ozzy was no longer in the band. How did you set about finding his replacement?
Well, really, Ronnie's name come to me because I met him at a couple of parties, and he seemed a nice guy, and we got on very well. And then I mentioned to the other guys about when it came to the end with Ozzy and it wasn't going to work anymore. We were talking with each other, what are we going to do, you know? We can't keep on like this. And it was even more difficult for me because I used to deal with Warner Brothers then. I was the only one that used to go over to Warner Brothers and report on how things are going. And of course they weren't. Nothing was happening. So I was going over there and they're going, well, how's the writing come along? Oh, fine. When do you think we'll be able to hear something? Oh, fairly soon. I mean, we hadn't got anything. We got like just little bits and dabs where Ozzy'd sing, and then that was it, you know. So I said, well, you know, why don't we give Ronnie a try? And okay, yeah. So I just phoned him up and arranged to get him over to the house. We had a rehearsal room at the house in Bel Air. We were living then. And we went in there and just had a little jam. First one was Children of the Sea, which the riff we had that we were doing with Ozzy, but we'd never done anything. Ozzy never sort of sang on it. So we started playing that to Ronnie, and Ronnie just instantly took off on it, and well, here we are. All of a sudden, we finally got a song together, you know, and it happened that quick, and everybody was pleased with it, and it just went from there, really.
How did you break the news to the record label that good news is we're on the way to making an album? The other news is not with Ozzy.
It was really difficult. It was really hard, and also the same thing with Don Arden. Don Arden was trying to convince us to keep Ozzy and say, well, you know, we'll get Ronnie to write some stuff for Ozzy. I said, that's not going to work, you know. He won't do that. And I said, you know, it's not going to happen. It's not, you can't force Ozzy to do anything. It's just not there. And of course then, when everybody found out, I think they were probably terrified.
Did the writing process happen really fast once you had Ronnie on board?
It did. It did. It started, because it brought new life into the band, where we were really fading. And it was a different way of writing as well. It created a different way of writing, because you're writing for, I hadn't written for anybody else for all them years. So having Ronnie there was a great sort of way for me to sort of, oh yeah, I can go somewhere else on this. Because I sort of knew where Ozzy would go, but I didn't know where Ronnie would go on the changes, you know. And where Ozzy would sing a lot on riffs, Ronnie would sing on chords, so you could put both in riffs and chords.
There must have been a combination of trepidation and real excitement in the studio.
Yeah, I think, well, it was really exciting. We knew what we got was good. We liked what we got, and we liked the sound we were getting. So it was a matter of capturing it on record, really.
What songs do you think really worked fast in the studio? There must have been certain songs that went down really quickly, take one or two, and others that maybe were a little bit more of a struggle to get through.
They'd probably take a little bit of time at first on some of them because of more of the drums, because you're doing them live, you're all out there playing. And Bill, we used to wind him up somewhat awful, you know. There was this one room that we'd used in Florida, and they'd got a curtain there, and we had Bill behind the curtain, and like a big black curtain, so he couldn't see us. And we got the engineer to just play a tape, keep playing it to Bill, and we're gone. So Bill keeps playing along till all the guitar stop. Is that it now? Is that it? I mean, we used to wind him up awful, but we had some laughs as well. It was good. But no, I mean they took as long as they took, and which I don't think was very long at all. I think we captured them pretty quick.
When you finished the album, Did you know that you had something special, or did you think, well, it's good and it keeps us going?
No, I thought it was really special. I was really pleased with that album. And for us, it was really an achievement, you know, because here we've come from all the aggravation we've had suddenly, and still fought through that, still fighting through the aggravation and all the problems. Everybody going, it's not going to work. It's not from the band, from the outside. And the same again with tours. We had to go out and tour and introduce Ronnie to the audience with us because we had ardent Sabbath fans. And it's difficult, and it was a tough job to stand there in front of an audience that's been looking at Ozzy for 10 years, you know.
Well, of course, in the middle of the tour, Bill quit.
Yes.
The band. That must have been something of a blow. So you now had the problem of finding a new drummer. Was that easy?
It was actually turned out quite easy, but I was petrified because I hadn't played with another drummer for so long. And
Bill went back a long way, even before Sabbath.
Bill went back with me well before Sabbath. I think it was Ronnie who said, we got some CDs here to listen to, and this chap looks good and sounds good, and we listened to his stuff. It was Vinny, and we thought, well, yeah, let's give him a go. And we didn't have long because we had an open air show in Hawaii coming up, and we had to do that. I walked in the rehearsal room, and there's this little bass drum about that big, and this little kit. I thought, is that his kit? I said, no, I think that's just his practice kit. I went, oh, right, okay. So we started playing, and there's Vinny on his little kit. And it all went good. He played good and picked the stuff up really quick, you know. Then the gig came up, which was a couple of days' time, and off we go to Hawaii. I walked on the stage, and there's this kit again. I went, you're kidding. We got this big drum riser from Bill had, because Bill had so many drums at that point. And so you got this huge drum riser and this little teeny kit on, looked like a Thai kit. And Vinny got all his notes of his bits of what he's got to do. And it started raining. It was all smudged. It was like, oh Christ! I mean, what next? You know. And after that, I said to Vinny, "You've got to get a bigger kit." And I actually said the wrong thing, I think, because now, I mean, he's gone to the extreme now. He's gone to a bigger version than Bill now. He's got these drums everywhere, you know. So, and he always blames me for that now.
Now you have the interesting problem that having made what was already regarded as a classic album in Heaven and Hell, what do you do next?
I think it started. First thing we were offered was this track for the movie, the heavy metal film. After we'd done that track, I think we ended up in LA then doing some rehearsals we just got like a rehearsal room and just jammed around and put all ideas down. We'd just taped the jams, and that's how we done it. We just built it up.
I mean, it's always regarded as being a heavier album than Heaven and Hell. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know if it is. I've looked on it as sort of a follow-up off from Heaven and Hell, and it's got the sign of the Southern Cross on, which is quite a heavy track.
I mean, it's sometimes underrated because it was following Heaven and Hell, which people were amazed by. Are you amazed how well it stands out today? People don't actually listen to it and say, oh, the production's a bit of its time. It doesn't sound dated.
No, I don't think so. Fun enough, you're saying that. I listened to it. I played a couple of tracks this morning while I was having a shower. And it's only now and again you go back and, oh, yeah, that really sounds, you know, really like that.
The Mob Rules tour is always looked upon as being a slightly fraught situation with almost the Americans versus the Brits, because then the Live Evil album, of course, happened, and there were stories about Ronnie creeping into the studio to have the vocals turned up, and Geezer doing the same with the bass. I mean, are those just exaggerations?
Well, I mean, that's the stories we heard, so we're only saying what we heard, which turns out it's a load of rubbish, you know. But the engineer that was telling us that at the time was also drinking more and more, so he was getting more and more pissed as the album went on. You know, what do I say? You know, we're going and going, it sounds different. Oh, you know. And eventually he goes, I've got to tell you, you know, what's been going on here. And he started saying, oh, Ronnie's been in and Vinny's been in, and then you two have come in and changed stuff, and then they've changed stuff. So it was all hearsay from our point. That's what he was saying.
Right.
But we've got over that one. But yeah, that was a difficult time for us. It really was. And we'd also been pressurised to an extent. We'd been working. so much touring to try and, you know, to break the band again.
Should we move forward then to Humanise, the beginning of a new decade? You're back with Ronnie. How did that happen?
You know what? I think how that happened was Geezer went to see Ronnie at a gig, one of Ronnie's gigs, and Ronnie mentioned to Geezer about getting up playing a couple of songs with them, Neon Nights and whatever else. And so Geezer did, and I think it went from there really. I think then we thought, well, yeah, let's talk about getting back together again and doing another album.
Was it like getting back on the bike, you four working back together again?
It was a difficult time for us to do an album at then, because our sort of music again was sort of, it had sort of gone quiet a bit, you know, out there. And it was also difficult for us putting that album together because we seemed to go in depth a bit too much of trying to change too many things. We'd have an idea and then we'd change this bit and change that bit, and then we'd get lost and should we go back to that other bit? Which bit was that now? Oh, that bit. And I think we just went up our own arse at one point, you know. Although I liked that album, but it was it was difficult doing that. I found. I thought there was a bit of pressure. We had not a very good vibe going at that time. I think something just wasn't right.
Was there always a feeling with that record? It was a case of let's do an album tour and see how things stand at the end of it, rather than we're here for the long haul.
Yeah, that's right. We did go in it like that to go out and do it for the long haul. Where now we take a totally different approach. We play it, you know, section by section now. We're going to do this. No, we don't want to do that. Okay.
And then, of course, after that, you went your separate ways again. Things carried on in different paths and coalesced in the 21st century.
Yeah.
As it were.
I know, it's funny how it all happens. And it started off from the record company where they wanted to do the Black Sabbath, the Dio Years album. And we thought, well, that's a good idea. And they asked if we got a couple of tracks hanging around that we haven't used. Well, yeah, loads of them. So no. And so I mentioned to Ralph Baker, my manager, why don't we try and contact Ronnie and see if we can write a couple of new songs, you know, if they'd be interested in doing that. And we talked to Geezer and Vinny and everybody. And that's basically what we did. Ronnie came over to England and we worked at my house in my studio. And we put 3 tracks down and it worked great. I mean, at first we were very nervous, a pair of us. We stood in my kitchen, do you want another cup of coffee? Yeah, okay. Do you want another cup of coffee? You know, none of us wanted to, you wanted to start, but you didn't, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what are we going to do? And straight away, bang, it started again. The writing team was there and we started coming up with ideas again really quick. And we'd done 3 tracks as opposed to 2. So consequently, when the album was coming out, the idea of a tour, the interest from promoters and everything was, oh yeah, you know, they're going to get back together and we want, you know. And that's really what started it.
And you came up with the name Heaven and Hell this time, which freed you from so much of the baggage of the past.
Well, it does, but I think the idea was, as I say again, we took it in stages and we didn't know how long it was going to last. We thought, well, we'd just do this tour. And that's what we planned, we'd just do this bit. Let's call the tour Heaven and Hell, you know, just to put it where it is. And that sort of stuck, and it's gone on to another tour and another tour. And then this Heaven and Hell sort of took over.
And of course, a new album came out of it as well, The Devil You Know, which
Yes.
again has everyone raving about, my God, the magic is very much there.
I remember being in Japan and it was coming to the end of the tour. And everybody was a bit grim, really, because it was coming to the end, really, and nobody wanted to say anything. And we got a bit pissed one night in this Japanese restaurant, me and Ronnie. I said to Ronnie, fancy, what do you think about doing another album, you know, we'd be interested. And that's how it started again. Oh, yeah, you know, yeah, I think we should. And when I went to LA, when we were doing this, the Devil You Know, we all decided what we'd do is do a CD of each other's ideas.
Right.
Riffs, and if somebody got 2 riffs or 10 riffs or whatever. So I went over with my CD and we got together at Ronnie's house and started playing bits of everybody and put them all on one, picked the ones out we wanted to use. Oh, I like that one. No, not that one so much, I like that one, out of each ones. And it was a great, so it was a bit of a, everybody put something into it.
Do you think those breaks you've had over the years, albeit not intentional, have actually enhanced the quality of what you've done when you got back together?
I think so. I think you've gone away and learned picked other things up, and realised what's missing, you know. And when you get back together, you appreciate what you've got with that lineup. And it's such a good lineup and such a good musical ideas. That's been the key to this at the moment. We haven't planned anything. Whether that's a good idea or not, I don't know. Apart from this tour coming up, but we haven't sort of said we're going to be around another 2 years and we're going to do this and do that. And do that. No, we've just gone on and done it, taken it in its stride. I don't know what we're going to do on this tour. I don't know what we're going to do next, but it's going to be good, whatever it is. I know we won't allow anything that's not. I first met Ronnie in 79, 80, when we were in Los Angeles. And we went over there to do an album with Ozzy, and it didn't work out. And I met Ronnie at a party, funny enough, and we were talking about just you know, doing something together. And so that's what we did. We sort of arranged for Ronnie to come up, and as soon as he hit the first note, we went, bloody hell, this is it. It's great. And from then on, it just took off. When I first heard he was diagnosed, knowing Ronnie never gives up on things. He always is a fighter, you know. And I thought, well, you know, he'll pull through on this. He will. And we all thought that. We all thought that because he was that type of person, he wouldn't give in. Geezer, take my hat off to him. He was with him a lot of the time. He'd go and see him at the house and the hospital, and so did Vinny, you know. It was quite a good relationship, well, very good relationship. And it got better over the years. Well, you know, we've all had our ups and downs, and like everybody does. But at the end of the day, we all loved each other and really cared for each other. And you know, this last time was fantastic. Everything was smooth, and that's it. It was too good to be true. It was going really well, and we were getting on famously, all of us. It's only now that, since his passing, that all the people are coming out saying how great he was, you know. I mean, the people have said how great he is before, but more and more now, more musicians, because he was.
Ronnie James Dio, and this is someone I met when I was pretty much a kid, and he took me under his wing and showed me so many things in music and life and in friendship, and you know, we were working together, we were mates, we were everything, but I was still a fan. And even times on stage when I'd look and I'd see him in front of me and I go, wow, I'm playing with him. God, you know, listening to that voice. So it was just such an amazing experience to know him, and just really appreciate being able to have spent that time with him. And I'm just going to miss him.
And so it's come to this. We always thought that we were going to make another album and be touring it again someday. And sadly it wasn't meant to be, but I'm just so glad that we had this time together over the past few years. It's been great. Ronnie was probably the best metal singer, or singer anyway, of all time. He was one of my best friends ever. He was a great guy. As you know, he loved his fans more than anybody else I know. It's been a tough year for us. I know he'll be looking down or up at us from wherever he is. Cheers, Ronald.
about you lot over here? How are you? Pretty great. Well, we love so much to hear you sing along with us that now that we've brought it down just a little bit, let's try it together again, and we can all hear this, and we can hear you. Hear all those great voices, and it goes like this. Oh! Thank you. Very nice. If you want to join in on this part, feel free. Sing me a song, you're a singer. Do me a wrong, you're a bringer of evil. The devil is never a maker, and the less that you give, why you're a taker. And it goes on and on and on. It's heaven and hell. Oh, well. Then a little white shape looked down at me. He said, heaven is where I know you ought to be. He said, come with me, 'cause I know just what to do. And I said, fuck off, I'm gonna burn in hell with you, and all of you. Down here, yeah. We'll take you there. All right, all right, all right. Whoa. Then a big black shape looked up at me. He said, I know where you ought to be. Oh. He said, come with me and I'll give you the Syria. First, you got to burn, 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 fire. It's on and on, heaven and hell. On and on, it's heaven and hell. On and on, it. The big one.